Hey guys, what's up? Okay, this is a bit of an addendum to my last video on the reason why there are pommels at the end of swords, or why there's a thing at the end of swords. As you guys know, and if you actually looked at the link that I put in the text description, the reason why I made that video was because of a discussion underneath one of my older videos about the reason why there was a ring at the end of Chinese sabers. I was first told, well, I wasn't told, but somebody else had stated that the reason why the ring was there is for counterbalance, which is not true. And this is an absurd assertion if you know anything about how swords are made in terms of, what really balances a sword. It's the distal taper. I already went into that in the last video. I don't need to go into it again. Now, one of the people there has since asserted that the reason why, this is my cat, the reason why that ring is there is for grip. You would, okay, let's say that this is the sword. This doesn't really have a ring, but it sort of does. The reason why is when you're holding it and you want to go with a two-handed grip, but you want to go with a lively two-handed grip, you would grip the ring, and this is not big enough, so the rings tend to be about, like, say, a bit bigger than this, like that big. You would grip it with your fingers and then manipulate the blade like that. Okay, before people start rolling their eyes, I have seen this. It's with the Daji Yang style saber form. I noticed that with the Tai Chi saber, or Daji saber, if you want to pronounce it that way. I've noticed some old masters, particularly Zhang Yun, and there was another older dude, I cannot remember his name at the moment, who talk about using these fingers to hold here to help manipulate the blade. Here's the thing. Actually, there's something else I need to get into in a moment. One, the Daiji Saber is a fairly recent weapon that has been created. Not many people know this, but the Daiji Saber is fairly recent in Chinese weapon history. You don't really see, like, what people consider to be a Tai Chi saber, the rather thin curved blade, slightly curved anyway, that's got that, gen-like tip at the end and that S-shaped guard. That particular weapon you don't see before the Republican era, and even, I would say, even past the Republican era. Granted, with the Boxer Rebellion, you do see some S-shaped guards with the ring pommel, but the blade part is not there. There is some speculation that that particular sword was actually created. Some people said Chen Mancheng might have created it, that particular sword. I don't know if that's true. I do know, however, that there's a lot of evidence suggesting that the form was definitely created recently. So, and considering that I don't see that same gripping the ring with other sabers with older Chinese forms, like, like an oxtail saber, like the Niu Weidou or oxtail sabers, or the Liu Dao, the willow leaf saber. Well, the willow leaf saber doesn't have rings. There are some sabers that have rings, like Pudo, Dado. I don't see people using the ring in that fashion with those particular sabers. So it's kind of up in the air about whether or not the particular technique of holding it like that is something that's been used since ancient times. And the argument was originally that the Tang Dao, or the Tang Dynasty saber, which had rings, that's the reason why the ring was there. It's now trying to suggest to me that, well, that's the reason why the ring is there. Never mind the fact that if you remember the picture I showed you of a Tang Dao, you can't, the ring is ornamental and has something in the middle of the ring, so you don't really have, it's ridiculous, I think, to say it that way. And we don't really have any proof because there's no ancient sword techniques that actually show that grip there. The only thing I see is recent techniques, and it's only with the Tai Chi saber, which is a recent weapon. And something else, that same grip I just described to you has also been used for the Tai Chi sword. Yeah, that same thing, where they'll use their two fingers and maybe the third to hold to the end of the weapon to kind of help facilitate that. And interestingly enough, the same guy who talks about that grip for the saber, Zhang Yun, he has another book on the Tai Chi sword where he describes the exact same grip. So it's not unique to the ring. I don't think it's final proof that that's the ring was there for. Anyway, that's just to get to the really funny thing that I've been told what the ring was for. I'm going to let it slide about holding the ring this way because it could have used that like this. Maybe you can, I don't think it's a proper. Personally, I think it's kind of ridiculous to try to fight that way. And I'm thinking it's a fairly recent thing that somebody had made up because these days we don't fight with swords anymore, so you can make up whatever crap you want. Especially since if you look at ancient fighting Chinese manuals, two-handed grips were straight proper two-handed grips. And I've even seen Chinese sword forms, swords like this, where you practice the form with one hand, but the actual application is with two hands, and they hold it like this. They don't hold it like this. Why would you? Whatever. But I'm gonna let that one slide because who knows? I see some old dudes using it that way. They could probably make it work. And I do have to admit, like if you're holding a sword and suddenly you want to like have a little bit more strength, if you don't want to overly commit, just kind of having your hand there to help manipulate that, it can be done. Just kind of having this as a lever, So I can let that slide. What I can't let slide is what I was also told by the same dude that this ring is there for, and it's for locking your thumb in for a reverse grip. Anybody who's held a sword in their hands, who's actually fought with one, I'm pretty sure you guys are laughing your asses off right now. But for those of you who are thinking mentally, I don't see anything wrong. Yeah, reverse grip. First of all, I think I've said in my videos before, and other people stated that the reverse grip is something that's pretty rare in fighting. And even in something as exotic as Chinese Kung Fu fighting, it's not really all that exotic. The reverse grip was rarely used. Rarely. I mean, I don't see any forms utilizing it. I don't see, with long weapons anyway. Daggers, yeah, you might see that. But for something like this, or a saber, which is freaking long and heavier, reverse grips is rarely ever used. With a long weapon, you want to utilize its length. So you're going to hold it like that. You're not going to hold it like this. The only time I would see somebody holding it like this is if, like I said before, an oh shit moment, you're just being attacked, you just quickly grab, oh my god, and you just happen to hold it here. But you're going to immediately try to go here so you can extend it. Or if you're at close range and you're dealing with the guy at close range, then you're trying to hack at the guy and he's like right in your face. You can't really, sometimes it can be hard trying to get it in, but if you suddenly go reverse and now you're in, you can, get inside and maybe, do a quick cut against the throat or something like that. I can maybe see that. But it's rare. You don't see like actual straight up fighting with the reverse. But what makes this even more absurd is having the ring be there to lock your thumb in place for it. That's the reason why the ring is there. Think about this. A technique that's rarely used all of a sudden has a common function. It has something to facilitate a function that's rarely ever used. That's absurdity number one. Absurdity number two, think about how you hold a sword. When you hold a sword, you're trying to align the edge to your opponent, okay? Now, again, this is not a ring, but it's hollow enough to kind of give you guys the idea. Here's my thumb. Here's me holding the grip, okay? Now look, the ring, this pommel here, the ring on Chinese swords is the same way. They go with the edge, okay? The sides of the rings go in the same directions as the edge and back edge. So here's my thumb going over here, and you see the problem yet, guys? Let's say I do try to put my thumb through. Look at what I'm doing. Now I don't have my edge aligned anymore just to get my thumb through. And just going like this is ridiculous. I have to turn my wrist like this in order to get the edge aligned toward my opponent. That's a lot of strain on the wrist. You don't have... You're mostly just attacking with the flat most of the time. Now you can try to cock the ring and push it. Like if this was going all the way through, you would, and you can like then twist the sword and have the ring butting against your thumb. Like let's say this is the ring, okay? I wish I had a ring pommel so I could show this more accurately, but here's the ring on the top of the sword, right? Now here's me putting my thumb through. You see how in order for me to align the edge without straightening my wrist, the ring has to go against this side and this side of my thumb, it's constantly pressing against it. That's not good. That you got that metal constantly putting pressure over here on the thumb, and all it's going to take is a good whack on the blade to break the thumb. It's not just that. It's not just a good whack either that you got to worry about. I want you guys to take a look at the Daiji Saber. Look at the length of the handle and look at the length of the blade. Now remember what I said about how weight is distributed on the sword. Now with a sword with distal taper, which a Daiji Saber would have if it's well made, yeah, we do. The length is not necessarily this long, but they're close. Like I'd say if you chopped off maybe this part of, say, this katana, you got, like, here's where the ring would be, okay? And here's the length of the handle. Now, if I'm holding this in a reverse grip, what do you think would make more sense when you're trying to fight somebody with a weapon this long? Okay, here's the weapon. Here's my saber. Now, in order for me to lock my thumb in, I gotta go all the way to the end. And anybody with a sword, try this at home. If you're doubting me, if you own a sword and you're thinking that this is not a far-fetched concept, go and get out your sword and hold it at the very end. Never mind the ring part. Just hold it at the very end and then try to manipulate your weapon. Okay? You're going to notice it feels very cumbersome because the center of balance is over here. In order for, the reason why a sword feels well balanced in the hand, partially is because the handle is located to be as close to the center of balance as possible. So most of the time when we hold a sword, we hold it close to the handguard. We don't hold it like this, normally. If you see like somebody suddenly go like that, it's usually to extend the reach for one like they just suddenly go into that move to get that extra reach, but they're not going to constantly fight that way. They'll like, do it to extend the reach for one quick pop move or whatever, and then go back. That's the way I've usually seen somebody extend like that. Or like even Japanese guys, sometimes I see when they're trying to extend the cut, they'll let go and then just go pow to get that extended reach. But then they're going to go right back to here so they can get better control of their weapon again. Now, if you're going to reverse grip, even though I still think the whole idea of fighting reverse grip as your standard stance is absolutely ridiculous, and there is no historical evidence that this is a main way to fight with a sword, let's just pretend that it is. Even proponents of the reverse grip hold the grip where the center of balance is close to the hand, where most of the weight of the weapon is close to the hand, so you can easily manipulate it. Now, sabers tend to be a bit more blade heavy than straight swords, than ten. So you really want to be able to have good control of the center of gravity, and so you want your hand as close to it as possible. Now, suddenly, now you're holding it here. Okay, you now don't have nearly as much strength to get this weapon to attack your opponent, the way you want. And then to make matters worse, I mean, again, anyone who's doubting me, if you don't own a sword, get out a broomstick or some type of long thing where you hold it at the very end. And particularly, especially something that is not necessarily, symmetrical. Like get a broom or something and hold your broom at the broomstick end and have, the broom part out there and hold it at the very end and try to manipulate this. It's going to feel very weak and you're going to feel a lot of strain right here in this part of the wrist, okay? Now, anything striking here, this part, I'm not going to strike this, I don't feel like cutting my hand. Actually, no, you know what? You're going to feel this, you don't have any strength to resist this. You have no strength to resist a block or a parry, anything knocking your weapon aside. Hell, you barely have any just holding in a reverse grip to begin with, but holding it here, that's insane. Now imagine, put this all together. You're holding it at the end. You don't have enough strength to really manipulate this the proper way. You definitely don't have enough strength to take an incoming blow. This is a very weak grip to have, and now you're putting your thumb through the ring, and then you're going to have to twist it a little bit in order to align your edge, and then now you got your thumb pressed up against this metal ring, holding it in a weak grip that can easily be knocked aside by a heavier weapon. You're looking at a broken thumb. That's pretty much the recipe for a broken thumb, no matter which way you slice it. The only way you're going to get away with not necessarily breaking it is to hold it like that, which is what the ring is this way. So the thumb is naturally, to lock it, you're going to be like this, which means now your edge is not aligned with your attack, because this is what's facing your opponent once you hold it this way. See? Whereas this way, now the edge is aligned. See? And forward, this is the most natural way every single culture has understood. You want the blade pointing toward your opponent as much as possible, so you hold it this way, not reverse. I bring up all this for a reason. This silly sort of conjecture on what parts of a sword are used for only comes about because we're not using these things for war anymore. We don't use swords for personal protection anymore. So it's very easy to come up with all sorts of nonsense on what parts of a sword are used for. True, we may have contests every now and then. We may, you might have sparring matches, you may go fencing and all that, but actually using these things in a life or death situation isn't done anymore. So it allows this sorts of nonsense to be proliferated as actual fact. And it's frustrating sometimes arguing with people on this, because they're going to insist that you're wrong because somebody else is doing it. Never mind the fact that that particular person isn't necessarily an authority on swords themselves, because have they been fighting in any wars with the damn thing? I'm going to go out on a limb and probably get myself in a hell of a lot of trouble for saying this, but just because somebody is old doesn't necessarily mean that they're correct when it comes to how a sword was used. And you have to understand that many techniques that we're using today were created during a time period when martial arts was no longer being used to save your life. The Tai Chi saber is one of those weapons. I find it kind of interesting for anybody who's going to be contending me on this, that the person who tried to argue with me on the usage of the ring, this was the Tao that they had to try to come to me with as an example of the ring usage. We were talking about Tang Dao originally. Why not show me techniques with the Tang Dao that use the ring in the way that they claim? That would lead more credence to the argument, wouldn't you think? It's an ancient sword, and you got ancient techniques which use the ring in the way that you describe. Hey, I can't argue with that, but you don't do that because you can't find it, because it doesn't exist. There is no historical evidence that the ring was used in that way. And there certainly isn't any evidence that the reason why the ring is there is as a counterbalance, because that's one thing we can rule out. I can let slide maybe using it as a grip, I've heard some people say that what it is like if you get your sword stuck in somebody, you can grip the ring to try to yank it out or something. Who knows? We don't really know. But there's some things that just basic physics or basic knowledge of sword making, whatever, can rule out. What we know of sword making shows us that the ring couldn't possibly be used as a counterbalance. And what we know about basics of just simply holding a freaking sword and the physics of that show that using the ring as some type of way to lock your thumb in for a reverse grip is absolutely freaking absurd. If anyone, now this is where I'm going to say I'm going to have a plea here. I could be completely wrong about what I just said and what I just described and what I just demonstrated. It's a big world out there. There are some really weird techniques out there that I've seen with swords that I never thought possible or I didn't think was used. And then later on somebody shows it to me and like shows historical context for it. I'm like, oh wow, that's freaking awesome. So if anybody, I'm putting this plea out there. If anyone can actually show me historical evidence of a Chinese saber with the rings at the end being used in this grip historically, I would like to see it. If anybody has any evidence of this, any video evidence, books, like ancient techniques, don't show me the Tai Chi one, because that's a recent form with a recent sword. I want to see like the old, like the Dada, like I'll even accept stuff from the Boxer Rebellion. If you happen to see any examples of people in the Boxer Rebellion, because they use swords with the freaking, rings on them. You got any evidence of people using it in a reverse grip where they take their thumb and put it through the hole like that and are willing to twist the hand like that and they made it work? And it's like, you got like techniques, forms, anything like that. Please let me know. I would be extremely interested to see how the hell they made that work. I really would. Hell, I'll even give you one step further. During World War II, the Chinese were using the dadao against the Japanese in trench warfare. And those swords had rings. So, I mean, granted, they had really long freaking handles. And most of the time when we see them fighting with it, it's with the standard two-handed grip like that, which would make sense if you got a long freaking handle for a two-handed sword. Why is a ring there? We don't know. It could just be for tradition. We don't know. But hey, maybe somebody happens to have evidence of people in those trenches fighting with a dadao like this, with the ring on the bottom, and they're hooking their fingers in there this way, or they're hooking it's real close quarters, so shit, I better put my thumb through the ring like this. Anybody who has any evidence of that sort of thing going on, please show it to me. I'd be extremely interested in seeing how they didn't F up their thumb that way and pretty much went against the basic laws of physics that we know to be true with basic sword fighting. I really would like to know. I would find it incredibly interesting and enlightening if you can show me that. That's my pleading to the audience. This is my request. If anybody's got any problem with what I've just described and what I've just said, I implore you, show me examples of this at work. Please. Please. And if you can't, please don't try posting up on here trying to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. That is all. Catch you guys later.